would like to welcome you to this session on obtaining BCS fellowship and charter status. I put a note in the chat asking if everyone could put their questions or comments into the chat area rather than the question area, into the chat area. And also, if you could put your location into the chat, because it's very interesting to see geographically the range of people and where they're coming from for the session. Also, I've put the note in the chat that this will be recorded and it will be added onto the event on the website probably in about 3 to 4 weeks. The slides for this session are going to be put again on the website and hopefully they'll be up in about a week's time. So there's quite a lot of things that you might want to see. So we'll be starting very shortly in a couple of minutes, just to make sure that people have a chance to arrive. First of all, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the BCS and welcome everybody to come along that's thinking about joining the BCS as a member, becoming a chartered member, or actually going for fellowship and going for FBCS. So at this stage, we'll actually start the actual presentation now. So welcome. This is from Margaret Ross. Now, I'm very lucky. I have a very unusual combination of the 3 charters, and this was really because that my career changed a little while during the period. Keith Taylor kindly provided some of these slides. Now, I've been very lucky. I've been involved with the BCS for a number of years, both on the trustee board and the council. Currently, I'm chair of the Hampshire branch. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is going through the SFIAplus. In other words, how can you actually identify where you're standing in your career at this moment and where you plan to be. MBCS, the chartered ones of CITP, the CEng, and also the CSci, together with EurIng, European Engineer, and also looking at FBCS and the BCS Life membership. Now, I think, hopefully, if you're interested in CITP or CEng, or both, hopefully, you will actually also register for the evening seminar starting at 6 o'clock on Monday the 28th of February, which is a CITP, and on Monday the 21st of March, which is about the CEng. Now, these are being run by 2 experts, Russell Friend from the BCS, together with one of the top assessors for CITP on Monday, and top assessor for CEng for the BCS on the March one. So hopefully the session that you'll get now will be a good preparation for it. You can work out exactly what you think you're going to be putting in your applications, whether you think you'll satisfy the requirements, and you can then get maximum benefit out of these in-depth sessions in February and in March. So let's come on to the idea about what we're looking at. And for all of them, from MBCS to FBCS and the charter ones, we're looking at these basic skills. So we're talking about, for membership level, the technical skills that you need, and very much your professional side of things. Now, when we look at the next stage, which is your chartered level, you're also taking into account the previous 3 aspects, together with the communication, business awareness, influence, innovation, and also then we come on to the fellowship level. So you're bringing in leadership and eminence. So we're talking about the MBCS, we're talking about the chartered, which is the CITP, the IEng, CEng, and CSci, and also the FBCS. And we're linking these across with this SFIA, the Skills Framework for the Information Age, which is very much the way that the BCS runs it and can judge where you're standing in your career. And we're looking at level 4 for MBCS approximately, a level 5 approximately for the chartered, and level 7 for the fellowship. Now, what is a very useful thing when you're looking at the MBCS is thinking about you're looking for approximately SFIA level 4, and this is somebody that's probably now working in the IT industry, and they're working as a professional. They're not needing constant supervision, so they're professional, very much skilled in their own rights. Now, what are we talking about SFIA? Now, this has actually been created with BCS and other organizations. Now, to find this, what you do is you go into My BCS, then at the top there's a section that says Careers Development. So you click on this, and then you go on, and there's another one that says Browse SFIAplus. If we have time at the end, and if you're interested, I can actually take you through and show you this as well. Now, there is 7 levels, and they range from possibly level 2, which could be somebody that's gone into the industry, maybe from A levels or equivalent. Level 3, possibly coming directly from university, where somebody is actually acting as a mentor for them, checking what they're doing. When you come into level 4, this is the level of MBCS, you're a professional. You can work unsupervised. When we're coming into level 5, which is basically the chartered status, you're possibly a team leader, you're monitoring new joinees to your company, your organization, and as you move up, you're coming into level 7, which is taking a much sort of higher level within your organization. Now, normally for CITP, the Chartered IT Professional, you're looking at about level 5. Similarly for Chartered Engineer and also for Chartered Scientist. Although the Engineering Council and the Science Council have slightly different versions of SFIAplus, but it's very similar, and you can actually work out, if you can work out where you are at level 5, you'll appropriately satisfy them on their own standards. So let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail. As you can see from this one, you've got a whole range of possible careers that go right through. These ones are all to do with strategic planning, and the ranges from these range from 2, which is possibly somebody coming directly from, say, A levels or equivalent. Level 3, which is likely to be somebody possibly coming from university. Again, it doesn't tie necessarily with your academic qualifications, but it gives you a feel. Level 4, it's very much professional, working independently. And this is very much at the level of MBCS. Level 5, it's probably a team leader, section leader, and this would be very much at the chartered level. And when you're coming on to level 7, we're looking at the fellowship. So with each one of these types, we've got the different levels associated with them. And we've got some more of these in the security and privacy version. And again, governance, risk. Again, you can see they range. One of the things where you can identify where you are and also identify where you want to be. Now, this is very useful when you're thinking about planning your career ahead. Are you looking for a route that will take you to a level 7? So let's see, there's some other ones with people management, skills management, stakeholder management, etc. Each one of these breaks down into these individual, shall we say, levels like cells. If we think at, for instance, the sustainability. Now, sustainability ranges from 3 to 6. Now, for the moment, if we look just at the 5, which is at the chartered level. Now, what we're talking about there, you have background, you've got previous experience, knowledge, skills, education background. So in fact, if you're going into SFIAplus, you actually click on the subject of sustainability. Maybe you then go and look at the appropriate level. If you click on this, you can find much more information about what you would expect to know and be capable of doing at that particular point. So although it sounds a little bit dull, the SFIAplus, it's very powerful. If we think again on that sustainability at the level 5, you've got not only the technical skills, but you've got things to do with CPD, continuous professional development. Now, these are just a slight part of the information that's provided for you. Work that you might be doing with charities, pro bono work, things that you might be learning, other skills, maybe languages, maybe management skills, etc. So there's a tremendous amount of information available as you look into the SFIAplus. Now let's look at the charter status. Now first of all, we'll look at CITP. This is the one that creates very much from the BCS. Now you've got, you're looking for SFIAplus approximately level 5. We've got the assessment, and then you have to do an interview and a presentation. It's a 10-minute presentation with a more detailed interview, maybe 40 minutes or so. Now, what we're talking about here, the most important part of the CITP is the assessment side of it. So this is something that you particularly have to be aware of. Now, when you're putting your application in, you're thinking of your CV. And this has to be your personal statement. So what is interested is what you yourself did. Not what your firm did, not what your colleagues did, is what you did. What have you achieved? As you carry on through, you've got to come up with usually 1 or 2 supporters. Normally they're at your level, better still if they're at a higher level. It's very nice if they happen to be BCS members, but if you don't know any BCS members, at least if you're taking somebody higher from you, maybe that involves another professional body, then that's fine. You put their application through. Maybe you know somebody that is from the BCS that can talk a little bit about your involvement with the BCS, whereas the people that might be your supporters that can confirm your technical skills, they might actually maybe not belong to BCS or may not even belong to a professional body. But the main thing is ideally they're higher than you. What you certainly don't want to do is end up say, well, this guy's very good, he works for me and he actually can say some nice things about me. That's not suitable. You've got education and experience review. And then we come into the interview with your presentation. Now, when we're talking about your CV, as I've said before, it's most important that it is your qualities, your job responsibilities, your skills, what you have achieved, ideally within the last 5 years. The most recent is the most important. In other words, when you're thinking about your CV, although you might have a full CV, take it and organize it specifically for submission, whether we're talking about CITP or putting it in for any of the other chartered or fellow. The most important thing is the most recent. So in other words, where you went for, say, primary school, secondary school is not very important. What possibly is if you went to degree, yes, that's relevant. You can certainly put in the other ones, but don't waste a lot of time on this. The most important thing is your qualities, your skills, what you have done. List all your IT qualifications, including business training. And when we come on to talk more about the chartered engineer, they are particularly keen in your management skills, etc. Make sure you've actually produced that information. Any distinction or awards, definitely put them in, even if they're not necessarily linked with IT. Give the membership of other professional bodies or the committees, what you do. Conferences you attended, maybe publications if you've had any, papers you presented at conferences. If you've got any patents, most definitely put those in. Also, it's useful to put in something about your relevant hobbies or social activities. Only just briefly, but it gives a lot of information about you. It could be that you actually hold a point of responsibility with a sports club. So this tells quite a lot about yourself. So don't actually be shy. Now, what we're talking about, the initial assessment for CITP. We're looking ideally at level 5. Now, it could be when you look at the SFIAplus, you identify you're not level 5 at all the things you do. Maybe sometimes you're at level 6 for part of your work, level 5 for other bits, level 4 for another bits. That's fine. You can identify this and identify the particular cells and the levels that you are that is part of your job. So we're interested in very much the issues about yourself. Now, taking this into a little bit more detail, let's take the first stage. When we're interested in the influence, technical skills, business skills. So think about the any projects or work that you've taken a lead on. This is important. Have you established any milestones? Have you been responsible for delegating responsibilities? Because this is likely to come through at the level 5. Have you actually started generating new ideas and new concepts, whether again it's for work or maybe it might be outside your work, maybe it might be, say, for some charity. Now, the influence on your organization, your customers, your suppliers, your peers. How about developing business relationships, allocate resources? Now, this again is something that we're thinking a little bit about. How complex is the work that you're doing? Technical, and don't forget it says and or professional activities. So don't forget this can be actually quite a key point that you might want to bring in, and it certainly comes to apply when you're talking about more fellowship levels later. And we'll come on to that at a later stage. So you have the difference between your very specialist areas and also your wider knowledge. Now, when somebody is starting in the organization, maybe from university or even from A levels, they're really concerned about what's going on in their section. Now, as you gradually start moving up, then you have to become more aware as a professional MBCS, maybe what your department is doing. But when you're coming to look at the charter status, you're beginning to have a more wider view. So you might think what your whole company is doing in this particular area. And later on, when we talk about fellowship, you're thinking about maybe your whole industry. So at level 5, at the chartered level, the relationship between the specialist area and your wider knowledge, which probably might be of quite a section of your organization. So you're talking about your business knowledge, understanding relationship, your area and the wider area, keeping your skills up to date. You might be involved with mentoring colleagues, and certainly would expect you to take care and take account of relevant legislation. Also on the business skills, both formal and informal communications, and demonstrating your sort of leadership skills, maybe as a temporary leader to take over when your main leader is unavailable. So we've got aspects of what you're looking for CITP. So we're looking for approximately level 5. You're talking about your influence, business skills, your specialist knowledge. Don't forget we're talking about what you did, your skills. I know I keep repeating myself, but it's very important. They make sure that you get yourself organized and you keep records of your CPD. This is very useful for you when you come to actually make applications. You've got to prepare for a presentation. You have 10 minutes and it's 10 minutes exactly. You will have stopped at 10 minutes. And normally with 2 assessors and they're in your particular area that you specialize in. Now you've got CITP and that stays with you basically forever. But it's only viewed as being up to date immediately when you've gone through acquiring the CPD. So what now exists is a certificate of current competence. In other words, 5 years after you've acquired your CITP, Then you can actually resubmit your CV, prove that you've kept yourself up to date, evidence of webinars that you've attended, meetings that you've attended, conferences, courses, etc. And they will give you a certificate of current competence if all is successful. And after a further 5 years, again, you go through this system. So the whole idea is you can prove that you're no more than, shall we say, 4 years out of date. So it's a reassurance of exactly that your skills are kept up to date. But don't forget, if you choose not to go through the certificate of current competence, your CITP still stands. Now, if you think you want to go for CITP and to go through this route, then as I've mentioned before, on Monday the 28th of February, there is this specialist session specifically on CITP. So I suggest that you prepare almost like a draft version of your application, and then you can actually compare with what you cover on Monday evening to go what you've done, realizing things that maybe you need to bring in, maybe that you don't need to put and talk about, etc. So now let's come on to Engineering Council. Now again, if you're interested in CEng or IEng, again, very important, if possible, try to register for Monday the 21st of March. We're planning to record both the session on CITP and CEng so that those hopefully will be available on the webinar, on the website afterwards. Now, when we're talking about CEng and IEng, what we're looking about is the qualifications. Now, engineering, now computing is basically almost a form of engineering. You're talking about, again, the equivalence of SFIA level 5, and you've got an interview. Now, with this one, academic qualifications are important, but there are alternative routes. So if you're thinking of CITP, you're thinking of Engineering Council, you're thinking of the charters, CITP, CEng, or CSci. And if you don't have the academic qualifications, there are alternative routes in each case. So don't worry about this, and we'll cover this at least briefly. So we're looking for IEng and CEng. Fairly similar. The CEng is a slightly different type of work you're doing against what you'll be doing for IEng. The IEng, normally you would expect something like an accredited bachelor honours degree. For CEng, you would normally expect possibly an honours degree and a master's degree or an MEng. Again, there is a specialist website. Again, you have an interview, 2 assessors, and during this interview, you provide the specific evidence relating to what you did compared with the competences of the Engineering Council. So one of the things that you think about when you're talking about the CEng is if you've got any examples of leadership, if you've gone any courses to do with leadership. So not only about your technical courses that you might have gone on, but if you've done anything on the sort of management side, definitely include this. This is quite important. Think about your interpersonal skills. Again, they would expect to have these ones. Make sure you've got commitment to the professional standards and comply with the code of conduct. Now, all of the professional bodies have code of conduct, and when you go forward, it's a good idea to have at least looked at those for the Engineering Council, and similarly when you're talking about the CITP for the BCS. Make sure that, again, you're very much aware of the legislation and carry out and maintain and enhance your CPD, your continuous professional development. Now, we've said one route is through academic qualifications, but this is where we have some more alternatives. And one of these is for the chartered engineer. That one alternative is a technical report. There is another alternative, which is an expertorial evidence. So again, we're looking at approximately level 5, and again, we're talking about interviews. But it is the technical report or the evidence that is actually one of the most important. Now, what we're talking about here is the guidance for the technical report. Is very much the report must be received within a certain times. It's reviewed by assessors, and hopefully you go forward for the CEng. Now, there is, as I said, the technical report, but there is also the other route as an alternative to an academic qualification. Now, this is just a personal viewpoint, but I think that the experimental evidence process is actually a better and possibly a more useful route to consider rather than the technical report. So talk about here is looking at the 3 key areas of science and mathematics, design, engineering practice. Now, don't forget you can get a lot of very useful design experience that you need when you're actually developing IT. So there is, although it looks a little bit disconcerting when you see science, mathematics, design, and engineering practice, in fact, once you start looking at it in more detail, you'll find that you'll probably actually cover these. Now, this career-based assessment that we're talking about, this experimental route, it's very, very useful. And if there's any problems, when you actually go through, then they bring in a third assessor. But it does mean that this would be a very sensible route, particularly for anybody that doesn't have appropriate academic qualifications. Now, there is another advantage about CEng. Now, if you work for a company that deals a lot with mainland Europe, or if you're thinking of actually working in mainland Europe and you have got CEng, Chartered Engineer, you might want to apply for EurIng, European Engineer. Now, unlike CITP, CEng, CSci, they all go behind your surname. EurIng goes in front. So you'll be EurIng, John Smith, EurIng, Jane Smith, EurIng Doctor, EurIng Professor. And although it's not understood widely in the UK, in certain countries in mainland Europe, it's rated very highly. You can actually apply for EurIng not only through the BCS, but through any of the engineering societies, such as from the aeronautics, maritime, etc., anyone that can award CEng. Your application is basically an extended CV that you're sending in. You can be summoned to an interview, which I believe is either in Geneva or Brussels, but I don't actually know of anybody that's actually been summoned for this. You are encouraged to have a second language, and we're talking about foreign language rather than computing language. But at the moment, the level of this doesn't have to be more than you possibly would have done at school or college. But it's a good idea to actually acquire your EurIng, and it is, as I say, widely understood by well over 30 of the European countries. Details of this here, and again, this is a good idea if your company deals with mainland Europe. If you think you might want to deal with mainland Europe, it's certainly worth thinking about. A little bit more about the EurIng, European Engineer. So you've got the link there, and it'd be quite useful. Now, moving now from CITP and CEng, both of which you can get through the BCS, the third option is the Science Council. Now, this is for CSci, Chartered Scientist. Now, this no longer, you can get this through the BCS. I originally got mine through the BCS, but there were so few members of BCS that went through this one, it was financially not viable for the BCS to continue being able to award this. At that time, I was actually on council and trustee board, and I also voted to no longer continue with the Science Council Award because the numbers and the financial implications made it really not viable for the BCS. Although having actually voted against my own personal interest, I had to go and join another professional society so I could maintain my Charter Science status, which I wanted to. Now, you're involved with qualifications. You're coming to approximately, again, SFIA level 5, and there's not normally an interview. Interviews are rather rare, but occasionally, sometimes, there are some reasons why it would be beneficial to the candidate to be interviewed. But qualifications is one of the key issues here. Now, as I've said, they have the equivalence of the SFIA, but if you look for level 5, you're about the right level. When you talk about working in science, IT, computer science, they're all in the same sort of areas. Now, does the work help advance science knowledge? Is a scientific method in what you do? Do you have business and professional skills? So again, this business and professional skills coming back again. Now, we're talking about professional level, and you're looking at this evidence for at least 2 years. Now, and the one thing is they're very much committed to CPD and very much to, like the other professional bodies, health and safety, environmental issues. One of the issues about CPD, as a member of the BCS, you're expected to maintain your CPD. If you have a chartered engineer, your CEng, then the BCS takes a random sample or of numbers of BCS members with CEng and asks them to sort of come up with the details of exactly what they've done in the way of CPD, continuous professional development. Now, when you're talking about the CSci, this is a much more formal system. Now, when you're coming into CSci, the academic one is a master's degree. Now, you don't need to have a bachelor's degree, so they're looking at a master's degree or. So in other words, if you don't have a master's degree or you don't have the academic degrees, then there is the equivalence report. As I've said, all of these 3 versions of charter status have the equivalence. And this gives you, provides you an opportunity to give the evidence of your knowledge and how you've applied it. So with charter scientist, you're normally looking for somebody with maybe 4 to 5 years experience, maybe leading a team. Now they've got the registered scientist, which is more like the MBCS, which is 2 to 3 years, member of a team, a professional working though unsupervised. And then below that, you've got the technician with possibly maybe 1 year's experience with a registered science technician. And there is actually a registered science teacher. Again, the details available from their website. Now, charter scientist is much more involved with the need to record the details of your continuous professional development. And rather than say, talk about CPD, they refer to it as PPD. What you have to do, and this has to be done every year, you have to submit a mini version of your CV, particularly the most recent things that you've actually done the last couple of years. And you have to actually look at the activities as well and fill them into a form on 2, at least, or rather more than 2 out of 5 types. So you've got to identify some things that have been work-based, such as maybe writing articles or maybe going on training programs. Could be to do with professional activities, involvement with professional body, maybe some formal education, or maybe attending conferences or obtaining qualifications. You've got the self-directed, and you've got the other voluntary work. In other words, something that's nothing whatsoever possibly to do with IT But you're supposed to look and to have been doing something with ideally 3 or more from here. And it's a good idea to actually keep these sort of records anyway. So when you actually listen into a webinar, keep a record of it. So this is a good idea for the future. Now, moving on from the chartered, we're moving on to fellowship. Now, the fellowship with BCS isn't a charter status. So, but what we have got here is FBCS. You're talking about seniority at level 7. You're talking about authority or eminence, which is about level 6 or 7. And this is very much what you're looking for FBCS. And with this, again, you have to have an interview. Now, what can we say about the FBCS? Well, one thing, you've got to have a CV and make sure it's your experience, your achievements. Now, when we're talking about FBCS, there's 3 parts. There's the eminence, the authority, and the seniority. The eminence part of it, what we're looking at is, are you viewed as an expert in your field? Do you have a record of published work, public speaking? Well, that's a possibility to prove your eminence. Now, the authority, which might be at level 6 or 7, we're talking about maybe you're involved with some committees, technical committees possibly, professional committees at national or international level. Now, if we look at the seniority, again, this is at level 6 or 7. Do you hold a senior position? Have you got maybe managing a team of 50 or more? If you happen to be a professor, if you're an academic, are you a senior lecturer where you're responsible for maybe a group of courses at degree level? If you're a civil servant, are you say principal or a senior principal level or higher? So again, these are the sort of positions that you might be in. And we talked about you need supporters. Now, ideally, it would be good if you've got 2 supporters that are FBCS. Certainly, if you can't find those that can confirm your actual experience, then certainly, in addition, you might want to come up with supporters that can confirm your technical skills, etc. Now, these might be somebody from your company. They might not be a member of the BCS. That's okay. But it's their position in a senior role to you, which is better. Try not to have somebody at your level or certainly not below your level. So when we're talking about the fellow, BCS fellow, FBCS, you're looking basically at the level 6, 7. What about seniority or authority or eminence or a combination of 2 or even a bit of all 3 of them? So again, there's lots of possibilities. And when you're coming to put in your application, you might like to talk to somebody else that's possibly got the fellowship and ask them to have a look at your application, because very often there's some marvelous things people have done and they don't think to put it in. Somebody that knows you say, well, how about this? Why aren't you telling them about that? So there's quite a lot of issues there. Now, moving along from the actual qualifications, something else worth mentioning is the BCS has life membership options. This is actually very well known at all. But if you go into, again, My BCS, and then you click on for life membership. Now, this applies that if you're 50 or over, then you can actually apply for life membership. Again, you deal directly with the BCS and a one-to-one, but this is actually, I've taken this from the website, the current figures, obviously they change. If you have got life membership at, say, MBCS, and you then raise up to FBCS, then you can just pay the difference between the 2 life memberships to actually upgrade you to FBCS. Certainly, I took the life membership when it was available to me, and it's a very good idea, because when you go towards retirement or when you retire, so many people say, well, okay, I still want to be involved, but is it worth really spending that amount of money, even though it's reduced as you get older and as you're retired? But if you've actually gone for life membership, you can carry on your involvement with the BCS, maybe some other bodies outside, like the National Trust, the English Heritage. They're all organizations that you can belong to as life membership. So when you're actually still earning, this is a good time to think about it, and certainly think about it from the point of view of the BCS. And within a few years, again, you can see the advantage financially as well. So when we're recapping, we've talked about what you're expecting for membership, chartered, and fellowship level. In other words, your MBCS, your CITP, CEng, CSci, FBCS, and how this links up with the SFIA, approximately 4, approximately 5, approximately 7. So there is a lot of options. If you're not quite ready and you don't think you're quite ready for the chartered or for fellow, well, what you need to do is make use of the SFIAplus. Have a look at what you need to get to the next level. Have a look at the courses that you want to do. So have a look at the sort of activities that you should be taking part in. And then maybe this is something you can bring up on your next work appraisal. Or you can actually take things across yourself. There's a lot amount of work you can actually do on your own with the MOOCs, etc., if you want to take other courses. Make sure you keep your CV up to date and concentrate on what you did. I know I've repeated myself, but it's very important. The times when I've actually looked at people's applications and it's all, we did this. And you think, well, what did you do? So, make sure it's very, very clear. Keep the record of all the CPD that you've taken, including attending webinars. If you did any presentations, publications, again, keep the records. Your CV will become long, but you can actually then tailor it from whatever you want to do, whether it's applying for a new job or it's applying to upgrade. Particularly think about getting involved with committee activities. If you're not active within the BCS, think about it. Most branches and specialist groups are very, very keen to get new people to come on their committees, or if not onto the committees, onto a subgroup working within the committees. Say helping particularly at branch level, being prepared to donate 1 or 2 evenings a year to go along to careers conventions. This will be very welcome, I'm sure, by most branches. Now, as we've said, if you're thinking of the CITP or the CEng, do register for Monday the 28th of February or Monday the 21st of March for the in-depth with the real experts on those particular ones. So we have, again, just a recap very quickly, the SFIAplus into my BCS, then into career development, and then to go to browsing SFIAplus. And similarly, you've got the websites for all of the other ones. As I have said, this slides will be actually available, so you can actually go through and pick up all the links within probably, I should think, about a week. In which case, thank you very much.